Welcome back to the Texas News Podcast, where we dive into all things Texas politics and the future of independence in the state of Texas. On today's show, we're going to be interviewing one of our very own, Jason Fry, who just authored a book, National Divorce, A Plan for Peace. We're going to talk about a little of his background, not as an author, but as a knife maker, and going to talk to him about exactly why he wrote this book. And man, we're going to talk about some of the timeliness of the book as well. So don't go anywhere. Okay, well, look, this is going to be an exciting one for me. Today, we're going to be, as I said, we're going to be interviewing Jason Fry. You guys may know Jason from some of the things that he's done around the TNM. We'll talk about that more in the interview. But Jason has just released a book called National Divorce, A Plan for Peace. And it is, I got to tell you, I got it early on. And as soon as it was available via the electronic version, I got a copy of it. And for those of you out there that are familiar with what we talk about in the Texas Nationalist Movement in relation to the process, and you hear me say all the time that really and truly texit is the way forward for peace, given, all of the situation that you've got happening, all of these internal pressures that are happening within the United States as an institution, this extreme polarization, and the fact that you've got so many people out there that have the words civil war on their lips, and not ironically either. So we're going to dive into the book with Jason. And before we get to that, just want to remind you, before you do anything else, be sure that you like and subscribe to the podcast. Be sure to share it with your friends. And without further ado, let's bring Jason on. Well, hey, Jason, man, thank you so much for joining us on the Texas News Podcast. It's good to see you, even with it like this.
I know we talk all the time, and I never see your face except on Coffee Talk.
I know, right? I know. It's pretty crazy. But here's the upside. We've got this now, and we're here to talk about something pretty exciting. But let me just do this because the intro. I tell people a little bit about you, and it sounds kind of dry, but guys, let me just tell you, for those of you who were at TexitCon last year, and we had the Line of the Sand Society Gala, and part of the spiffs, the thank you gifts that we gave to some of our donors were hand forged swords in the style of what they might have carried during the Battle of the Alamo. And it was this Jason Fry who actually made those.
Yep, that was me.
Yeah,
that was me. I've been doing knives and stuff a long time, and one of the ways that this thing goes forward is that everybody contributes what they can. Right. I can make some knives, so there we go.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I got to tell you, there are some pictures out there, and I'm sure Jason, by the time this is all over with, we'll get you all the places where you can connect up with Jason. You can see all of that. We can talk about his. But we're not here to talk about how you were a contestant on Forged with Fire, or you're just incredible with knives and swords. That's old school. 5 or 6 years is an eternity nowadays. But what we are here to talk about, though, is that you have released a new book called National Divorce: A Plan for Peace.
Mm-hmm.
And look, I first off, let me congratulate you.
Thank you.
I'm really excited that you got it. I mean, as soon as it was available, I went ahead and downloaded the ebook version. I got my paperback version in. Thank you for that, by the way. It's a book that needed to be written. But before I go into talking and gushing about your book, let's talk about this. You went from being pretty prominent in the knife community. You're definitely a supporter of Texas independence. How did you bridge that? What was the motivation for you to sit down and go, I need to write a book about this, about national divorce?
Yeah. So one thing that your audience may not know is that I am Noah Smithwick. So if you've ever seen Texan partisan stuff over the last 5 years under that pen name, that's me. I have been in the closet a little bit about my Texas independence because of where I work and because of the political climate. So I decided it was time to come out in that regard. But why right now and why a book? I have two children, two sons in the military, and I have two other sons as well. And back in February, when the Shelby Park incident occurred, again, for those that are, we should all be familiar, but I'll give you the story.
Go ahead and tell everybody just in case.
So there was a park at the Rio Grande, and the feds were maintaining air quotes operational control, which means they were letting everybody and their cousin come in with no screening or vetting or anything across this park to cross the river. And Texas did some research and figured out that was not federal land. It was a public park of some kind. And so they locked the fence. They locked the gates. And that prevented the feds from maintaining control of the park. It also prevented them from using the boat ramp in the park, which is how they were putting their boats on the river. So basically, Texas took over the control of that area. So what you ended up with was Texans on one side lined up and feds on the other side lined up. Okay, now I'm fully confident nobody intended for anything to go to be escalated there. Okay, but we've all seen the movie where everybody's pointing guns at each other, yelling, "You put them down! You put them down!" And it's always that one bug-eyed kid in the back, right? It's the same movie every time, mm-hmm. And it goes sideways, even though nobody intends it to go sideways. So with kids in the military, realizing how close we were to something going sideways, not on purpose, I figured, heck, I got to get out of here. I got to get out with this message ahead of time. That we could make a deal. we could figure this out in ways where nobody's lining up, right? Because if you never line up, you never shoot at each other. I mean, that was kind of where I started coming from.
Right. Well, and I got to say, and I'd like to talk about this a little bit more. I mean, it's a pretty big step. I mean, you just literally outed
mm-hmm.
yourself.
Correct.
As being Noah Smithwick. And,
mm-hmm.
look, we in the TNM, we respected that. I mean, there are just some people that are in particular positions or jobs that, mm-hmm. It's problematic. But, you really keyed in on something here that I think it's important that everybody recognize about what you did. You said, look, here's the deal. I have been, I've had to be kind of keep my light under a bushel for a while. But now is the time. It was a line in the sand moment for you, I'm guessing.
It was a little bit. And again, when it comes down to, if texit takes 2 years or 5 years or 10 years, we're going to be independent. We are. But if it takes, what escalated it for me was, again, children in the military. So if it goes badly, it won't be us, but if it goes badly, it's literally my own children that will have to help clean it up. Right. And I'm not interested in that. I will put everything on the line to keep my kids safe. The other thing the reason I took the risk to kind of come out is because the whole book really is, what if we don't fight, right? How are you going to get in trouble for being a political pacifist, right? How are you going to get in trouble for arguing that we should vote? That's it.
Yeah.
We should vote. So I was willing to take the risk because, again, as I've become a little more fluent, my positions are fairly defensible. I mean, I'm comfortable at a point where I've studied under masters like Daniel Miller, and I can get the quick answer, right?
Don't make this weird.
Nah, man, you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying. I steal your phrases all the time. Now, you did steal some of Noah Smithwick's phrases once in a while, and that was part of what I was writing for. So it's all good.
Well, look, it's what we got to do, right? I mean, we're out here trying to amplify, and it's been interesting because as I've gone through the book, I'm noticing, there are obviously key themes here that are going to resonate with people that are Texit supporters, members of the TNM. The issue of, peaceful independence, following a peaceful legislative process. There is a tremendous focus on process, which is something that we do. So just do me a favor. I think we were able to definitely get one of the motivating factors and connect it, but I'd like to hear from you if for the folks out there when they go to read the book. I don't want you to give it all away. But can you tell them sort of what to expect? I mean, you're obviously writing about national divorce, not just about Texas, but more
Right, right.
of a
So
larger concept.
yeah, let me talk about that issue. So we know Marjorie Taylor Greene threw out national divorce on Twitter a while ago, and the world kind of exploded, and everybody except us kind of went a little nuts about that. Tom Woods hustled out a book about national divorce, but it was podcast transcripts. It wasn't, research. You were in that one, weren't you?
Yeah.
So again, it wasn't foolishness. It wasn't ignorance, but it wasn't well researched either. And we have always said that national divorce is a slogan, not a plan. We've said that over and over. It's catchy, it's cool, but it's not a plan. It doesn't get you there. And so part of what I chose to do was intentionally lay out a plan to make that split happen. Now, I've been a Texas guy a long time. Those of you that know our plan will recognize, hey, that's the same plan. Yeah, because I think we're on point. So part of my effort here is to merge the slogan and the metaphor with the plans that we're doing, the plan that Cal Exit is doing, the plan that New Hampshire's doing,
Right.
the plan that Dr. Q advocates, like with best practices worldwide, right? So I'm intentionally trying to move ahead of whatever circus is coming in the next month with a plan that goes with that slogan. So that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, and it's good to hear that. I mean, look, you've really keyed in on something that I think continues to amaze a lot of people. We did an episode of this podcast a couple of months back, asking the question: Is Texas preparing to exit? Right? I mean, and we talked about it from that standpoint of is the groundwork being laid, and then we talked about this idea in the next podcast we connected it. We talked about polling numbers that were done. I think it was by YouGov or Redfield Strategies, one of the two. Where they put the one where they put their thumb on the scale, and then got exposed by the Independent California Institute. That was the YouGov one, right? But when you've got about 25 states that if you take the thumb off the scale, you got about 25 states that have enough popular support that if it went to a vote, they would probably do so. It's important for these folks to be thinking along the lines that we've been thinking for a very long time, which is political movement, preparation steps, political, cultural, economic,
Yep.
going through those.
Legislation and voting, not prepping and ARs. And no, it's we've got to get we've got to get those guys that are all over the place
Yeah.
kind of reined in towards some focus of how can we accomplish independence in a way that goes smooth.
Well, and it needs to. I mean, going smooth is a key thing. You and I could have about an hour long conversation about uh, the issues that disruption produces. I mean, I think at the end of this, anyone who wants this, that's really sincere about wanting this, wants to do everything they can to mitigate disruption. I mean,
Absolutely,
wouldn't you agree?
absolutely. Yeah, there's no reason it has to be not. There's no reason it has to be chaos. I think the way I say it is that the split is inevitable, but the chaos is up to us, right?
Yeah.
It's up to you, it's up to me, it's up to our legislators, it's up to the activists, it's up to individuals on how it goes smooth.
Well, let me ask you this. You said something that I think, I mean, is definitely uh, something that people are going to get out of the book, which is you talk about the inevitability of the split. What leads you to that conclusion?
Okay, couple of data points, but I don't want to go too deep into that nerd level stuff. But if you look at the United States as a whole, not just Texas as a whole, there's some fairly divisive issues,
Wait,
right?
you
So
say you mean whole? That's whole with a W at the beginning, right?
fair,
Well,
it is
okay, just
a
making
hole that will suck. Yeah, no, but so if you look at the entirety of the United States, all 50 of them plus our outlying territories. No, I don't know. There are some pretty major divisions, and the media is pushing these divisions pretty hard. So there's the basic red blue, right? But really, that is about I want to be I want more government, or I want less, or I want more involvement, more rules, or I want rules that suit my preferences, right? So uh, that's an oversimplification, but people will not agree on that. There is an urban-rural component to that. There is division on a bunch of specific issues, right? So if you ask 50 people on the street about abortion, you'll get 62 different answers, right? And they'll be different. And when it comes down to it, we're talking about killing babies. People have strong opinions about that. You're not going to change somebody's mind with data, on an issue like that. Guns are kind of the same way. Some of us grew up around that, and we've had as many guns as we've had, hammers or screwdrivers. It's just another tool. And then there's other people that have never, that it's the opposite of their culture. So there are so many issues that we've been held by force under one umbrella that are just simmering. And there's, I don't see a way to resolve that. My friend Bob Murphy talks about how there's really not a national marriage. Okay, there was never a day that Jason Fry stood up in front of his friends and his God and said, "Me and the United States, man, we're tight forever." Right? Didn't happen. Didn't happen. We were all born here, or we came here, or whatever. But there was never a day that we chose this government structure. Right? So when you didn't choose it, it kind of makes it a little messy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, in those divisions, we're talking about inevitability. I think anyone that is hearing what you're saying right now, that is even remotely paying attention to what's going on around, I mean, you can see the path. I mean,
yeah. And so why I started with the marriage thing, I didn't marry the United States, but if I had, and we were in this much trouble as a relationship, what does a marriage counselor look like? What does it look like? How is that? There's 100 million people, 200 million people on each side. There's authority structures on each side. It is not me and my spouse not getting along, right? There is no way that a person can step in and mediate that or moderate that. And if there was, there's no such entity. There's no such person.
Right.
There's no such thing. And so, using the marriage analogy, you like to think, well, divorce is terrible. We should get some counseling and try to save this thing. Okay. Except that that's not possible in this metaphor. There's just too many of us.
Right. All right. Well, look, I know our time is limited, and I'm trying to be as respectful for with your time as possible. But so let me move on to some things about the book that I want to talk about. So in the book, you talk about this issue of tribal sorting. Why don't you explain that concept to people and what they can expect to see in the book about it?
Right. So Pat Buchanan wrote a book back in, I think, 2012 about how tribalism was what was wrong with the United States, and everybody just wanted to be in their own group and fight. I argue the opposite. That tribalism to me is me and my guys, me and my family group, me and the people I choose to associate with, whether that's by proximity, the guys I live next to, or whether it's by ideology, like my church is my tribe. But it's the people that I choose to associate with. And it's really only the last 300 years that we've had these mega states, right? So for all of humanity, until a minute ago, that's been the way of humanity, is that we get along by helping our neighbors. We get along by helping our family. We get along by governing ourselves. Right. It's only a recent phenomenon that we've had these overarching structures like we have now.
Right.
And so I'm arguing not that tribalism is the problem. I think aggression is the problem. The problem is when you try to make your way be everybody else's way. And I would say both sides of the political spectrum are guilty of that. They both, man, they will use the power of government to coerce the heck out of all of us to have it their way.
Sure.
And so I dive into some reasons why. I mean, I come from the perspective that whoever they are probably not crazy. In exchange for that, I expect them to realize that I am also not crazy, right? Just because I want it my way and it's the opposite of yours doesn't mean that one of us is wrong. It means maybe we don't need to be governed all by the same set of rules. All right, that's my proposal. So a
Well,
good
look,
dose of live and let live, and not use the power of government to force things on people.
it always baffles me. And I'm guessing that you're in this camp too, but it always baffles me when people look at this idea and say, of a quote unquote national divorce or states withdrawing from the union to be self-governing independent nations, and they act like it is a concept that is so foreign when literally, even a, in first grade, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, they're pulling out a globe. Yeah, sorry, flat earthers, but they're pulling out a globe, and there's all those little lines on it, and all of those represent people and states that have the ability to govern themselves. And the same people that think that a state wanting to withdraw from the union is weird doesn't think anything about that at all.
Yeah,
They don't think
you
it's
learn the
weird.
trivia of like Luxembourg being tiny, or Liechtenstein, or
Mhm.
Monaco, or the Cayman Islands. It's some little islands out in the middle of the ocean,
Andorra,
but they're a country. They're a country.
yeah,
They're their own self governing entity, and right. So somebody comes across and says, "Well, Texas can't do that." There is no statistics, math, logic, anything that supports the idea
no,
that any given state, even tiny Rhode Island, has the ability to be an independent nation. Again, nobody says Liechtenstein shouldn't exist. It can't be a country because it's too tiny. That's not an argument anywhere,
no.
unless you mention a state separating from the United States. Then they bring
I
it up.
know, right? It's just, just throw that in the category with some of the dumb objections, right? But
Hmm.
well, let's do this. We're getting ready to wrap up our time. I could sit here and spend 2 hours with you
Me too.
going
Easily,
through this.
easily, for
But
sure.
what we would do then is we would end up spoiling all the book and not give any
Sure.
reason for people to go get it, other than just
Hmm.
being nice to Jason because he
Because
did
it's
something
interesting and
cool.
awesome.
Yeah. I mean, they got to read it. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
they
what they
do.
got to
They
go
do.
do. So, let me just kind of, as we grind toward the end here, I want to hit you with really something that I would say is personal and really philosophical.
Okay.
And
Yeah, you bet.
I want to know, we heard a bit about your background. What motivated you to write this book.
Hmm.
Um, just single out a single personal experience or insight from your life that you think has most shaped your views on the need for
Hmm.
peaceful independence.
Okay. So a couple of things. The one that comes to mind the most, though, is my religious background. Honestly, so I grew up in a Christian denomination that was autonomous, that did not have a centralized structure. So every congregation was its own boss. We had many beliefs in common, right? I mean, if your church had that sign on it, it was sort of interchangeable. You kind of knew, but I wasn't the boss of you over there, and you weren't the boss of me over here. So that was a piece of it, honestly. Another piece would be, I was in ministry for a while in Churches of Christ. That's where I grew up, and there's a slight little bit of conflict in churches, right? Churches sometimes split.
Hmm.
No, a lot of times it goes stupid. I mean, it goes sideways. And so in grad school and in life, I've studied what does that look like? What does process look like to keep a church together, or to say, man, we would be so much more awesome if we were separated. What if we did that on purpose, right? Rather than just politics and chaos and acrimony. Um, and then I went into behavioral psychology as my day job. So my actual job is to keep people from hurting each other, right? So that's what I do every single day. Is what could go wrong? What are we going to do in advance to make sure that situation doesn't get set up? That's my day job. And
Yeah.
so to translate that over into Texit or politics or New Hampshire or national divorce, or however you want to frame it, is, I mean, it's all those things tied up together. It's valuing autonomy. It's having values, Christian values that make me believe that non-aggression and being kind to people and helping people is actually important. Um, and then again, the behavioral psychology side um, of getting ahead of things, of
Right.
making the plan in advance, and then having some responses in place too to de-escalate. Again, is another piece of my job. So put all those things together over the last 46 years, and here we are.
Well, fantastic. And look, I'm glad that you were motivated to write this book. I think it's a book that's needed. I'm always encouraging um, people to write in this space, because
Mm-hmm,
I mean, you and I
mm-hmm,
both know that there is, in comparison to some other topics out there, there's a lack of good,
mm-hmm,
solid
mm-hmm.
information or thought on
Right.
this. And
So
so it's it's an important thing you did.
yeah, so let me add one little thing about what makes this book different from some of the other stuff in the space. I've long given you credit for being singularly focused on Texas independence. We would not be where we are without that singular focus. But I also say that every state has that same right to self determination. Um, so there's plenty of scholarly research on the size of the ideal state, on economics of small versus large, on politics of small versus large, and for better or worse, that stuff is not awesome to wade through. you know, if you've been to school enough, you can get through it and understand it. But nobody really wants to, except the guys that write those books. Bless their hearts, right?
Yeah.
So my intention with this was to use simple words and metaphors, and cite accurately and have good sources, but write the primer, write the intro uh, to this concept. And again, I'm intentional about making the plan from Texas and New Hampshire and all these other movements of legislation. I'm intentional about that being the answer, but I'm really reaching out to everybody that says, "Well, I don't even like those guys." That's the guy. It's the primer on purpose.
Right, right. Well, and it's perfect. I mean, when I dropped the Texit book, most of the media came from outside of Texas. And,
Mm-hmm,
what I
mm-hmm,
had to continue to explain to them is, look, I wrote this. The work we do is for Texas. This book is written for
mm-hmm,
Texans. But, I'm sure somebody else could go out there and understand that they could probably make a similar case. And
mm-hmm.
it's important. All of these states, and definitely your book does this. All of these states need to be thinking about this right now. Well,
Mm-hmm.
they should have been thinking
Right.
about it a decade ago, but
They
you
should
know,
have,
uh, you
but
know,
but
you know the
yeah, and like
the time for repentance is I guess when you're standing on the gallows with your neck in a noose,
mm-hmm.
but at least it's something, right?
Right, right. And that, again, that's a piece of why now. I'm fully convinced that regardless of how the election goes, 47% of people are going to be really grumpy. Okay,
Yeah.
that's about
Look,
the only prediction I'm willing to stick my neck out for. Is that a bunch of people are going to be mad, regardless of the outcome.
Hey,
Right, and
hey,
so
Jason, heads
again, it's
up.
my
I wake up most days grumpy, so I mean
fair,
it's not
fair.
really contingent on an election
Well, that's
outcome.
why you're still drinking coffee in the evening. No, but you know what I'm saying. So,
Yeah.
as again, my philosophy, my day job is, what if we got ahead of this thing?
Hmm.
So, I wanted the message of peace. I wanted the message of reconciliation. Of what if we figure out a way? I wanted that message out ahead of that, right? So by the time you know either Marjorie Taylor Greene or Gavin Newsom says national divorce next. I don't care who it is.
All right.
Right? There's something in that space that says, hey,
All
this
right.
is not a terrible idea. Even if the crazy one on the other side is the one that said it, right? So that's why I wrote. So
Well,
that's what I want to do.
fantastic. Well, look, here's I want to thank you very much for coming on here and doing the interview, man. I'm
Yeah, you
excited
bet.
about
You
the
bet.
book, excited to talk to you about it. Why don't you tell everyone where they can, first off, get the book, and second, where they can connect up with you to learn more?
Yeah, so the book is available at national-divorce.com. That's if you want autograph copies straight from me. You can buy it from boring places like Amazon. It's there as well. So this is what it looks like. It's this one. Um, anyway, but national-divorce.com is to get them from me. Also, if you want me for podcasts or writing or things, I have a contact form there for that.
Birthday
Um,
parties.
I can
like
put
that?
on a little red nose and be a clown and do tricks and then talk about secession. It's a great combo.
That's excellent. Well, look, I mean, look, and you've been out there, seen some of the interviews that you've done. I'm
Hmm.
excited that you're getting this opportunity, and I'm
Yes, sir.
excited that people are picking up on the book. This is
Hmm.
going to be
Hmm.
a big deal, and I got to tell you, I'm excited to be able to recommend it to the folks in the TNM, so Texas supporters,
Yeah,
guys.
like I said, you've been an encouragement to me for a long time, and I'm just glad to be able to put out a little bit to help. You know?
Well, I appreciate that. So national-divorce.com is where
Hmm.
you can pick up your copy, or you can head over and put some more fuel in Jeff Bezos's rocket and get a
Hmm.
copy at Amazon. Guys, this has been my good friend and your fellow Texan, Jason
You bet.
Fry, and his book is again called National Divorce: A Plan for Peace. Jason, thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate it.
Okay, friends, that was a wrap on the interview with Jason Fry. I want to thank him again very much for joining us on the Texas News Podcast and giving such a great interview. Always nice to talk to folks that understand the reality of what Texas independence looks like and why all states should be having this conversation. Remember, get your copy of National Divorce: A Plan for Peace at all the different places that Jason just told you. We've got a lot coming up on the Texas News Podcast. We've got some great episodes coming. And of course, we're releasing this right when we just have weeks to go until the next election. So, definitely a timely conversation. If you have not already, please be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast wherever you may find it. We're all over the place. So, be sure to do that. Be sure to share it. But more importantly, look, if any of this resonates with you, and you are not already a member of the Texas Nationalist Movement, you need to go do that right now. Head over to tnm.me/join and become a member today. Getting ready to head into this next legislative session, we need all the people we can get. That is, if you want to get and win a vote on Texas independence. If you don't, then, I get it. You're probably listening to something else. But if you are serious about wanting to see Texit happen sooner rather than later, then that's exactly what you'll do. You'll go over there and join tnm.me/join. And so, my friends, that is a wrap for this episode of the Texas News Podcast. I will leave you with the words I leave you with every time we're together. They're not my words. They're the words of Sam Houston when he said that Texas will again lift its head and stand among the nations. I believe that time is now. And the question is, will you stand with her?